Hey guys! So for this assignment I chose the graphic novel The Lumberjanes, which is published by Boom Studios. There's a lot of great women who are part of this series, like Grace Ellis, Shannon Waters, Noelle Stevenson, Brooklyn A. Allen, that just brought this story to life. The story itself is 128 pages long. It is not a true graphic novel. It's a compilation of the first 4 issues of the series. There are 46 issues in the series total. And then it was also, there's a 6-part crossover with Gotham Academy. So I chose this series because I had read the first 4 issues, the first volume, and I thought it was really interesting the way that they portrayed these characters. So it's 5 different girls that are portrayed throughout the series, and then you have the cabin leader, and then you have the camp director. 5 characters that are portrayed in the story all have really cool, different, fun personalities, and it's what makes the story, I think, the most interesting and makes you want to read the story, because it's not just 5 girls who are all the same and they're competing against each other, but it's 5 girls who are totally different and they're working with each other, and they want to help each other and grow. And so I think it's pretty cool that they chose to have these different characters and kind of approach the story in that way. So the 5 characters that are presented at the beginning are Jo, April, Mal, Molly, and Ripley. Jo is the more smart one. She's more laid back. She wants to find out the mysteries, but she wants to be the one to decode everything, and she has a notebook she writes stuff down in, and she's that fun kind of nerdy type. And then you have April, who is more creative and funny, and she says a lot of the quirky little things that she says. She's the one who says them the most. There's at the beginning, she has a little red hood on, and they're fighting these wolves, and she makes a comment about Little Red Riding Hood and going to grandmother's house we go. And so her little comments that she makes are kind of fun and interesting for her as a character. And then you have Mal, who is more like anxiety driven, and I relate to this character a lot. She's more about making sure everything's okay, and oh, should they really do that? And so she's a pretty interesting character to kind of throw into the mix of these other 2, and then the other 2 as well. And then you have Molly, who is more of like the mom friend. She wants to make sure everybody's okay, that they're not going to do anything crazy, and she's mostly this way towards Mal. She wants to make sure that she's okay. And then last is Ripley, and Ripley is more like the carefree, outgoing one. She's not worried about anything. She's not fearful of danger. Totally opposite of me. But also totally opposite of a couple of the other characters. And so it's interesting to see how they all come together and they're friends and they watch out for each other. And, even though they have different personality styles, like they're so diverse, they have a common goal. They look out for each other. And it's just really interesting to see that the girls are working together, as opposed to a lot of stories that we see, where the girls are always against each other and it's always a competition. So this is really cool. To see that. We also have the character of Jen, who is the cabin leader for the girls, who at the beginning of the story you can tell is very, very frustrated and would rather have a different group of campers in her cabin. But by the end of the comic, we do see that she realizes that the girls are telling the truth and that there's a lot of crazy things going on at the campsite. And then there's Rosie, who is the camp director, who is very different character. She's kind of, she pushes the girls to kind of not listen to Jen, but then also tries to get them to listen to Jen. And so she's very interesting character, and it's funny to see how she interacts, and she can never remember Jen's name, so that makes it kind of interesting every time Jen goes in, oh, Jane or Jan. And so it's interesting to see that dynamic between Jen and Rosie. So this specific graphic novel is the first 4 issues of the series. So each one kind of faces a conflict and has a little bit of resolution within each one, but because it's together as an overall, you can kind of see the 3 act structure at a bigger level. So from the beginning, in Act 1, we see at the very beginning the girls are faced with these three-eyed wolves, and they're trying to defend themselves from against the attack from these three-eyed wolves. So Act 1 starts off obviously on page 1 and ends on page 30. We see the beginning where the girls realize this isn't your average everyday camp, that there are supernatural things going on. And then when we get to page 30, we kind of see the girls faced with this idea of what are they going to do, and the fact that Jen doesn't believe them, and she thinks they're just running off and doing crazy things. Then from page 32 to 79, we see Act 2. We see them face all kinds of sorts of supernatural things. We see them almost lose one of the girls, and as they go through this act, this section of the story, we see more things happen. Jen really doesn't believe them. She thinks they're crazy. And from page 80 to 102, we see the resolution, but it does leave us with a kind of a cliffhanger because, as I said, the book does continue and it goes on for more issues. But we see that Jen does believe the girls, and that they realize that they need to stick together and to overcome this supernatural force that is out there and against them. We see these boys come into the story, and the seemingly normal boy camp ends up being not so normal. So we see that the story is the 5 girls. The story is about their journey and their story arc to figure out how they're going to face the challenge of the supernatural, and Jen not believing them and them kind of be out there alone. And they have this goal that they're trying to achieve, and they really just want to have a normal summer, and then all that changes, and their goal becomes overcoming the supernatural force and trying to figure out a way out of it. Act 2, we see these boys come in, and we see them kind of realize that maybe there's something going on with the boys that's overall this supernatural stuff that's happening at the camp. So it supports what we see in Act 2 and then what we then have to resolve in Act 3. And then we're left with that cliffhanger at the end, which is the boys. And so even though the girls escaped, they're still out there and they have to figure out how to overcome that in the next issue. The characters themselves, I think, definitely overcome a lot. There's some of the characters, they have these anxiety issues, or they're too free and too carefree, and so we definitely see them grow as they move through the story. I think the biggest character arc that we see is Jen. From the beginning, she doesn't believe them, she doesn't care, she just wants them to listen to her, and then in the end we see that she's come to terms and she realized, oh, the girls are right, and she's on their side and she wants to do whatever she can to help them. And we see them all huddled and hugging at the end, and her saying, them saying to her that we're glad you're on our side now. So this story definitely has great transitions. We're able to see the story move from, page to page to page. I definitely think that the transitions were easy to follow, and they were also interesting, so they always ended on something that made you want to turn the page or go to the next square. And I think that they effectively used the action to action, subject to subject, scene to scene, were the main ones that were used in this story, and I think they did a great job. It was easy for the reader to follow. They were able to understand what was happening, and I don't think there was any confusing scenes. I think that the comic themselves, that there are certain pages that could be considered a mini comic. I definitely saw a few of the pages that worked really well, and it was really interesting, to kind of see those mini stories throughout the overall story. The story itself was definitely very engaging. I thought it was very true to life. The characters, you could relate with them. There was a character for every person. They had their flaws and they had to overcome them and work together. and it was funny. There's a lot of quirky dialogue that was really interesting, and you don't see that a lot in teen novels and stuff, and so it was really interesting to read. Those little quirky, dialogue and sayings, and it made it interesting, and it made the characters more believable. Um, it just talks a lot about the power of friendship and overcoming ourselves and the importance of realizing that we have something to offer. I would definitely recommend this story for my classmates and my friends. While it may not be something that immediately you're like, oh, I don't know if I'd really enjoy that. Overall, the story that is laid out is really fun. It's kind of reminded me in a way of the Supernatural series, but for a younger audience, and obviously with 5 friends instead of the 2 brothers. So it was really interesting to read. I really enjoyed every aspect of it. I enjoyed the dialogue, the characters, the artwork was really cartoony, and it was really cool to see that artwork, like it popped off the page, and the different monsters and things like that. And it was interesting to see at the end of the volume, they had a little sketchbook showing of how the characters started and what they evolved into, which was really cool to see, because you don't always get to see that process. But I would definitely recommend it. It's got adventure, it's fun, the characters, you grow to love them. It has the supernatural. It talks about, girl power. The whole purpose it was created was to show girl power, and that it's okay to be different, and that we can all bring our differences together and create something really cool. So I really liked that, and I think overall it was a really great comic. Um, the flow of it, the characters, the story, I really enjoyed it. I don't really see much that I would change about it. It's just a really interesting story. The dialogue, everything was really fun and interesting, and I wanted to read more and keep turning the pages. And now that I've read this first volume and some of the second volume, I definitely want to continue and finish the whole series. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I can't wait to see everybody else's videos. Until next time, bye!